unmuted. attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning. The City of Tampa Community Redevelopment Agency meeting is called to order. It's now time to stand for a moment of silence.
No, I have a.
Oh, sorry, you do have someone. I sorry, it says here moment of silence, so I apologize.
No, I appreciate.
Board Member Maniscalco.
Thank you very much. I appreciate Jason Sowell, who's a chaplain with the Tampa Police Department for 6 years and the founder of Current Initiatives, a Tampa-based nonprofit organization leading local missional initiatives such as the Laundry Project, Hope for Homes Project, and Affordable Christmas. He has been a minister in the Tampa Bay area for more than 20 years. Sir, if you would please come to the lectern and lead us in the invocation. Please stand.
Please stand.
Thank you, everyone. Let's bow our heads. Gracious God, thank you so much for this wonderful day that you've given us, a new day to live and celebrate you. Thank you for these city officials that give of themselves to serve our community and to lead our great city. We ask your wisdom for them as they do their duty and make difficult decisions and guide our city's future. May their decisions be full of purpose, wise counsel, compassion, grace, equity, selflessness, and uplifting for all in our community. Thank you for our citizens who step in and make our voices heard and make our community, work to make our community a better place for all. We honor you today. We ask your blessings on this great city, and may we all continue to represent our city well, and through our words and actions, may we give hope to all those that we encounter every day. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, we ask these things. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Carlson? Vieira?
Here.
Maniscalco?
Here.
Citro?
Here.
Goods?
Here.
Miranda?
Here.
Hurtak?
Here.
We have physical form.
Thank you. Mr. Massey, can you please review the rules pertaining to public comment and participation in the CRA meeting?
Yes, ma'am. First, you'll see something new on your agenda, and that's the adoption of the minutes. So could I first have a motion to adopt the minutes of the December 8th? And then secondly, there are some prior minutes that have not been formally adopted. They're on file with the clerk's office. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes for the past CRA meeting? Well? Second. Thank you.
Okay, can I do that in one motion, or?
We did separate ones. It's already
Okay.
done, I think.
So we have a motion made by Board Member Goods and seconded by Board Member Maniscalco. All in favor? Aye. And we have a second motion by Board Member Goods, seconded by Board Member Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Then, relative to the rules of participation, this is a regular meeting of the City of Tampa Community Development Agency, or the CRA, held at 9 a.m. on January 12th, 2023, in City Council Chambers here in City Hall, 315 East Kennedy Boulevard in Tampa. The public is able to participate in this meeting during public comment for a maximum of 3 minutes per speaker, either here in person at Old City Hall or virtually by way of Communication Media Technology, or CMT. However, the use of CMT does require pre-registration with the City Clerk's office. Directions for pre-registration are included in the notice of the meeting and on the agenda. Can I please have a motion waiving the CRA standards rules of procedure to allow public comment and participation by CMT? Thank you.
Okay, I have a motion by Board Member Goods and seconded by Board Member Maniscalco. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Thank you so much. Let's take a look at the agenda. Ms. Travis, how are we looking today?
All righty, good morning, CRA Board. Nicole Travis, your interim CRA Director. We do have several changes to the agenda, so just follow me for a second, please. Would request that items 5 and 6 be moved up on the agenda so that you can hear from the EBOR CAC Chair, Stephen Barbas, first.
Okay. I have a motion by Board Member Maniscalco, seconded by Board Member Goods. All in favor? Aye.
Thank you. Also, I'm asking that you consider the East Tampa CRA down payment assistance for $400,000. That item is not on the agenda. We do have some details and stats. I'll request that we can speak to that probably after Mr. Barbas, and for you to take action on that.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Board Member Maniscalco, seconded by Board Member Miranda. All in favor? Okay.
Thank you. I'm also requesting that as of the next CRA board meeting, that there be a portion of your agenda that's dedicated to a standing report from the director. There's really no space on the agenda for the director to provide a report, so if you would make a motion, thank you.
Motion made by Board Member Good, seconded by Board Member Miranda. All in favor?
And then I'm requesting that you've heard from Bee Lakes Parks in our department that has been working on branding and marketing. Some of you have been more interested in that than others, and I'm requesting that that be placed on the agenda for February.
So moved.
Okay, motion made by Board Member Miranda, seconded by Board Member Goods.
Thank you for indulging
All
me
in
because I
favor?
didn't have time to do that. Thank you.
All in favor? Aye.
Item number 1, there's a memo has been submitted to requesting that that be continued until May 11th. CRA board meeting, please.
So moved. Second.
Okay, motion made by Board Member Maniscalco, seconded by Board Member Vieira. All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Thank you. And then lastly, we're requesting that you pull item number 9 from the agenda, please. The applicant is requesting more time to work on their item, so thank you.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Board Member Maniscalco, seconded by Board Member Goods. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you for your indulgence.
Item number 2.
I have questions about item number 2. I'm not.
Well, I think you want to take public comments.
Okay, great.
First, and then, I'm sorry, you do have a memo from the Chief of Staff requesting a continuance. I apologize, yes.
Want to talk
Okay.
about that.
Okay, well then we'll leave it just to talk about.
Okay.
Okay.
You want to do that after public comments?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
perfect, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, it is time for public comment. The public is welcome to comment on any item for up to 3 minutes. If you would like to comment, please come up to the podium.
Mentezna, I want to say huru. Huru means freedom in Swahili. We say we as African people should always be thinking about our freedom every single day as we walk this planet Earth. Because since 1400, our freedom and our independence and our self-determination have been compromised. It's been compromised through slavery, chattel slavery, convict leasing, segregation, integration, assimilation, genocide, affirmative action, call it whatsoever you want to call it. 3/5 compromise, say we as African people are 3/5 of a human being. Right in the white folks' constitution, we've been truly compromised. And we're seeing that compromisation going on right here in this city. This city is just a microcosm of what goes on internationally. African people feels it worldwide. The conditions here in the city of Tampa is the same as it is in New York. You can talk about Mason-Dixon line. You can talk about North-South. You can talk about progressive places. Wheresoever African people live, when you have that black skin, you get treated bad. When they see you, they know to treat you bad. They know to pull you out your car, search you illegally, beat you like they beat the man in Lakeland the other day. We see it go on every day, and they do it intentionally to keep African people terrified. They like to keep us terrified. They want us to be scared of them because they think they have white skin privileges and they have white skin opportunities and they carry out state-sponsored terrorism against African people. And that's what they want to get away with. We're 26% of this population. We have never gotten 26% of this city budget. I don't care how much we pay into it. We're 26% of the population and we deserve 26% of the budget. Nobody say anything about that. And a racist white man at the Tampa Police Union put out a racist survey. Narcissism, that's what it's called. Narcissism. A narcissist always try to make you feel they're right, even when you catch them doing something wrong in camera. They try to explain to you. All these narcissists that you see all over the world, killing their wives, beating women, they got something against gays, they got something against blacks, they got something against everybody. Narcissists. And racism, that's what it is. And this racist who should be fired, he should be terminated. And all of y'all up there should send that letter or that survey to the Justice Department. He should be fired. The mayor should fire him. He should be terminated. He's worried about who leaked it. You get caught with having sex with a 4-year-old and you worried about who told on you. No, you should worry about your penalty and how you're going to get reformed. And that's what he should be worried about. And all 7 of you guys need to send that letter, send that survey to the Justice Department and make charges come up against him. Brandon Barclay.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak this morning?
Good morning, Council.
Good morning.
I am Andre Hill, Jr. from Urban Progress Alliance. We have submitted a request to amend the CRA agreement between our nonprofit organization and CRA to approve pre-development cost for $45,011 grant that we received from you guys. I just want to let you guys know that I'm in support of that. Please support that for us as well. Also, I will be sending all documents required as outlined in the conditions in the amended agreement. That's all.
Thank you
guys.
very much. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Anyone else would like to speak today? Okay, I believe we have one person. Are they online?
Madam Chair, could I just apologize, I'm late. I was stuck just trying to get next to the parking lot for more than 10 minutes. Maybe you all experienced the same thing. Unbelievable.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is that stops the traffic right there.
yeah.
Good morning. My name is Michael Randolph, and I'm with the West Tampa CDC. By far, of all the roles that the city council play, the CRA role is probably the most important because of its impact and changes. Last year, I attended a meeting given by the Federal Reserve and other federal agencies that's looking at updating the current CRA. They maintain that the current CRA has been largely responsible for gentrification. That has been largely because of the way they look at the numbers. When they say minorities, they look at the absolute number of minorities in order to tell the banks that they're doing good. When we look at those numbers, and they also looked at the numbers, they found that when they look at minorities, the minorities that was gaining the most was white females. That when they look at African Americans and other Hispanics, those groups was not doing good. That's why they're going to re-look at the CRA, hopefully this year, and make amendments to that. Also last year, the city of Tampa gave a meeting related to the update and the future of CRAs. One of the things they acknowledged on that meeting was the importance of the relationship between the CRA and Community Development Corporation. We enjoy a working relationship with the West Tampa CAC because of our ability to leverage funds. We also enjoy a working relationship with the CRA manager, Jesus, who I think is doing an excellent job with his expertise. Now, one of the things that have come out of the CRA that's very important is the Community Benefit Agreement. The Community Benefit Agreement, which was reached by the city and the West Tampa CDC, gives an example of what the city can do to increase the opportunities for folks in the city. For example, the agreement with the West Tampa CDC reduces gentrification and increases economic opportunity for people in the community. I'm hoping that when you begin to look at the broader Community Benefit Agreement, that you take into consideration and you consider gentrification as an intentional purpose for the CRA. Make it intentional. Thank you very much. Again, this is a new year, a new attitude, and a new way of looking at things from the CDC and the community of of West Tampa. We thank you for your job and continue to work with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Miss Travis.
Hello again.
Hi.
So at this time, would like to deal with items number 5 and 6. If we'll have the CAC Chair, Steve Barbas, to come up and do his verbal report outlining some activities for EBOR and also addressing the dedicated art fund within the EBOR CRA. It's 2 items, so thank you.
Great.
Right. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Steve Barbas for the EBOR CAC. Thank you for having me this morning. The first matter that I'm going to address is all the activities that have been occurring within the EBOR CRA 1 and 2 and the EBOR CAC. Right now, we are in the process of a 7th Avenue bricking feasibility study. We had the first of 2 workshops that took place on October 25th. The second workshop is scheduled to occur on January 24th. This is to determine the feasibility of bricking, red bricking 7th Avenue from about Nucio Parkway all the way to 22nd Street, determining the feasibility in terms of cost and implementation. No decisions have been made, but the first workshop in October was extremely well informed. I think we had about 80% of the board members attend that meeting. So we anticipate that we'll have the same amount of attendance at the January 24th meeting. Tree grate maintenance and cleaning has been completed. This was one of the things that we had paid for, which was done in Ybor City. Streetcar funding by Ybor, CAC CRA 1 and 2. Initially, we had allocated $150,000 for the streetcar. We received a subsequent request for an additional $75,000, which we did fund for $225,000. That, though, precipitated the board to vote on getting together with the other CRAs who are impacted and affected and utilize the streetcar, who are not participating in the funding of the streetcar, particularly with the failure of the recent transportation tax. This is a long-term project. Right now, we're dealing in a short-term fashion, and it needs to be dealt with in a long-term fashion. We met with Vic Beatty. We had an excellent Zoom meeting with Vic Beatty, and we're going to be following up on that and seeing what we can do to include some other participants in funding of the streetcar, as well as seeing what we can do to make the streetcar more of a long-term goal, which is what we want to try to do. Co-sponsorship grant program, we've had this program since about 2006. We had 25 applicants this year for a maximum amount of $10,000. Out of those 25 applicants, this is all for culture and arts. Out of those 25 applicants, 23 of those received grants of $10,000 for a total of approximately $225,000. 7th Avenue Archway lighting project with sidewalk enhancement, that started on November 1st. That is actually running ahead of schedule. That is also sidewalk enhancement as well. We're very pleased with how that's coming along. We're actually hoping that it will be done ahead of schedule. That's been a long-term project that I've been on this board for about 7 or 8 years, and every year I would hear about it, and every year it would be postponed, but the funding has occurred and it's going along quite nicely. East 7th Avenue, we also finally were able to dedicate the monument and the streetscape there. That was done, completed with a dedication on November 8th. Frank Costantino was the happiest I've seen her in a long, long time. WEDU featured a segment on Ybor CRA 1 and 2 staff on the Greater Ybor episode. Probably one of the nicer things that we've had accomplished this past year as the Ybor Ambassadors and Clean Team. We have a new program there. It started November 1st, 15 members. They are a visible presence. I don't know if anybody of you saw it last night, but it was actually featured on Spectrum News. And nothing but positive reviews of what we've been getting since then. They're a visible presence in Ybor City, not just for purposes of cleanliness, but also for purposes of security, and also for purposes of just making people feel welcome in Ybor City. Ybor sign fabrication, as you probably, most of you well know, most of the signs in Ybor City are in a terrible state of repair. So we have awarded to Sign Star of Tampa to repair all the signs in Ybor City. They are to start soon replacing the signs in Ybor City, those especially that are in a dilapidated state. One of the last things that we did at one of the last meetings that we had is we changed, we had a facade grant, $50,000 facade grant. West Tampa CAC has a micro grant of $10,000. We plagiarized that, if you want to call it that, but we thought it was an excellent program. It's 5 $10,000 grants that we basically give for the outside of any structure. It's a matching grant, so if we give 10,000, they give 10,000. It has to be done by a contractor. It can be painting, siding. It can be anything that makes the outside appearance look good. We voted on that latter part of this year. That's the 5 $10,000 grants. Those can apply to things like doors, outside painting, fences, awnings. The Heart of Ybor Art Contest, we just finished the Heart of Ybor Art Contest. That's H-E and then capital A-R-T. There were 25 people who submitted art, photography, and there were 4 recipients of awards for that as well. And of course, everybody knows about the many events that we have in Ybor City through that co-sponsorship program. Some of them are funded by us, some of them are not. The Newman Cigar Factory celebrated their anniversary on November 19th. We also have the Architecture Hop with the Ybor City Museum Society. We have the Taste of Latino Festival, the Cuban Sandwich Festival, Christmas tree lighting, just to name a few of the many things that happen in Ybor City. And those are just some of the things that we've been very busy doing with Ybor CAC, CRA1, CRA2, and the YCDC. There is never a thing that all of those who serve on the Ybor CRA and CAC love Ybor. We're dedicated to Ybor. We want nothing but the betterment of Ybor City. So with that, we were also asked in August to give an update with respect to the Ybor Arts and about funding an art fund. This was done more or less in August. Councilman Carlson was nice enough to pay us a visit at one of our board meetings and gave us a little bit of an explanation as to what it is that he would like to see happen in Ybor City by way of the arts. Let's see if I can get this PowerPoint here. And that motion was made on August 18th at 9 a.m. So what we thought we would do is give the CAC board an idea as to what it is that we do presently by way of activities with the arts and culture in Ybor City. There's always room for improvement. And I think after me having a personal meeting with Mr. Carlson at my house, which I thoroughly enjoyed for 2 hours plus, and then attending one of his Cafe Con Tampa meetings, I think that's what it was, over at the Hyatt Hotel, I have a much better feel for what I'd like to see personally that he would like to see in Ybor City. And I think it's viable, and I think it's valuable, and I think it is needed. It kind of reminds me, our offices were here in Ybor City. Our law offices were here in Ybor City in the early 80s, and back in the early 80s, we used to have art festivals over there between the El Pasaje Hotel and the old Martinez Ybor Cigar Factory that went on for years and years. You know, it's long gone, or the Arnold Martinez museum or gallery that he had there. But I wanted to first show that we are cognizant of the fact that we do have a mind towards Ybor City and the Ybor City cultures and arts. So if you look at the first art-focused special events funded through the reimbursable co-sponsorship grant program that includes an eligibility criteria of celebrating the arts.
Could you move it up just a little bit? It's between slides for some
Sure.
reason. Thank you. Perfect.
Since 2006, we've funded about 200 events. Those events, this is just a small sampling of those events. Fiesta Day, Festa Italiana, Hillsborough Community College Visual and Arts Series, Tampa City Ballet, Tampa Fringe Festival, Countdown Improv. Festivals with art components are listed there as well. Cigar Festival, Cuban Sandwich Festival, Phantasma Fest, Fiesta Day, Tampa Pride Parade, and Ybor City Weekly Saturday Market. We also have a pretty heavily involved marketing program for those culture and arts activities occurring in Ybor City. Those marketing efforts include calendars of events that are posted in the Ybor merchant windows as well as in the streetcars. We also do cross-promotion via website, social media platforms, and Ybor Flash, which is our newsletter. We did a video presentation produced by Hillsborough Community College students in coordination with the Ybor CRA office, as well as the Tampa Arts Alliance, featuring Daryl Shaw, about the new affordable artist work studio, The Meat Yard, located over there on 2nd Avenue, that has 50 workspaces for upcoming artists. Current Ybor CRA1 Arts and Cultural Programs, the Heart of Tampa marketing campaign was another one of our marketing campaigns to try to focus and entice artists to come to Tampa. We had photography contests here in Ybor City in 2018 and 2019. And as I mentioned earlier, we had the Heart of Ybor Community Art Contest that we recently did for the 2nd year. And this had 26 applicants with 4 recipients of awards. And the last page that I'll mention here is the nonprofit partnership for creative art display in Central Ybor parking garage windows. In Ybor Speaks, and I don't know, I brought, if you'll excuse me, my phone here. Ybor Speaks is in Centennial Park, and I think it's a wonderful program, again, for the arts and the history of Ybor. And I'll just read a little bit of what's on the City of Tampa's website, if you'll allow me. Ybor Speaks is a public art project created to celebrate the immigrant experience in Ybor City from the boomtown of the 1890s through the creative revival of the 1980s. The City of Tampa Division of Arts and Cultural Affairs commissioned playwright Sheila Cowley and sound designer Matt Cowley to create a sound installation that welcomes you to Ybor City through immersive soundscapes and audio vignettes and histories and memoirs read aloud. The Cowleys included local talent from the Spanish Lyric Theater, faculty and students from the University of South Florida School of Theater and Dance, stage and screen actors based in Tampa Bay, and many residents. Original music was composed by La Lucha. The in-person experience at Centennial Park takes you back in time through soundscapes played on speakers at the park. These audio adventures evoke life in Ybor City, from the musical calls of street vendors and horse-drawn carriages to busy streetcars and World War II shipyards, from a modern highway slicing through the streets to the festive artists and writers' ball. That's just a little piece of that. It's just a wonderful thing, and that has just recently started as well. Now, with all that said, playing devil's advocate, I could say, okay, a lot of that deals a lot more with culture than it does with arts. I will say that when developing our strategic plan for the Ybor City CRA and CAC, one of the committees that we had, the Community Preservation and Sustainability Committee, as part of their strategic plan and our strategic plan for the Ybor CRA and CAC, one of the primary objectives and priorities, and by the way, this was before the August 8th motion, is to create and accomplish a cultural arts strategy. And the way I see it is, this is all just the initial steps. We would like to see nothing more than cultural arts in Ybor City. And I think that I speak for the board when I say that. Ybor City has so much potential, not just as an entertainment or residential or commercial district, but as an arts district. And speaking for the Ybor CAC, I can tell you we are 100% committed to having an arts district there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Board Member Carlson.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for your the historic perspective that you bring to this, and your family has a long history with Ybor, and the consensus you built in the CAC. He mentioned us meeting at his house. I just have to say this real fast. I have the cheapest house on my street, and when people walk out of my door, they say, "Wow, you live in a fantastic neighborhood," and that's because his house is across the street, and it's very beautiful house that he bought a long time ago at a great price, but just one of the most beautiful houses in Tampa.
Is
And he
this
has a great
is this
art,
public record?
and he has a great art collection inside too. Anyway, Daryl Shaw and his partners are investing heavily in the arts. They've taken the Crest building and they're putting photographic museum in the bottom, and Tempest and other art galleries are moving upstairs. And HCC is there with huge investments in the arts. And the group you mentioned I put together, which my company is helping to fund. We don't make any money out, we're paying to fund it, despite some message testing some people are doing right now. The idea is to reactivate Ybor the arts. People who, like Steve, who've been around since the 70s and 80s saw that Ybor was the arts place for the region back then. And then some of the artists went to St. Pete and other places, and Daryl's helping with big money to bring them back. And around Meat Yard, he's gonna take several city blocks there and convert it to the arts and activate the arts, and he's looking for input on that. But Daryl can't do it by himself, and that's the problem, is that just like Jeff Vinnick can't do everything around downtown with his money. So we need to figure out how to supplement, and that's really my question there. There are a lot of people with foresight, Richard Gonsmar, you, others who are trying to add to it. And the conversation I had a few weeks ago, I brought in Peter Kageyama, who wrote the book called The Love of Cities. And my company paid for the event and paid for books for everyone. And we brought together like 30, 40 Ybor leaders just to talk about the arts and how to reactivate it. And my company doesn't benefit from that at all, except that we are in Ybor and our employees like it. But I think there's an excitement of rebuilding the software and creating a vision for Ybor that's tied to the past, that's respectful of the past and honors the past, and then looks at what we can be. And I'm new to Ybor, and so I'm not going to pretend to know very many of the answers, but I'm glad to have people like Steve as advisors on that, and hopefully we can create some fantastic ideas. I want to ask you a different idea, and sorry to put you on the spot. I just found out about this yesterday, but the downtown partnership apparently is having discussions about taking over Ybor area. Does the YCDC or CAC know anything about that? Is there any? I wonder who would be in favor of this. I've heard I got a bunch of calls in the last few days of people in downtown in Ybor who are concerned about it. But I wonder, is there something that people have talked about in Ybor that they need that they're not being offered right now? And I wonder if we can somehow address that through the CRA.
Well, to answer your question, there was a meeting that took place with some representatives with the Tampa Downtown Partnership, and with Daryl Shaw was present, a few other folks were present. It was strictly a information type meeting. Our representative, Courtney Orr, was absolutely, totally, 100% unaware of it. So we asked for this meeting to take place because of that. We did have that meeting. I left that meeting thinking it's something worth following up on and pursuing. We made absolutely no commitment whatsoever as to support it or not support it, because it was not one that was discussed with our entire board. So we left that meeting with the idea that we would next discuss it with the board and what had transpired at that meeting. More than that is really, although there was, and I don't know how personally, it was apparently relayed to La Gaceta, and it was featured in La Gaceta, and there were numbers thrown around there that I was not told at that meeting about potentially representing $600,000 additional funds to the city of Ybor, but it was going to be, our concern obviously was that it would be an additional tax on some of the residents of Ybor City. So that's certainly something that had to be vented. It's my understanding, because of something that had been said at a meeting relatively recently, within the past couple of days, that we had voted in favor of this. That is not the case. We have not voted in favor of anything. It's not even been presented to our board. And so, but the piece that was in Ybor, in La Gaceta, to my knowledge, was just, this was something that was discussed. The editor thought it was a good idea. It could bring in $600,000 extra. It would not impact CRA monies, 1 or 2 for Ybor, 1 or 2.
Is there anything
that number wasn't even discussed at that meeting?
Is there anything and I apologize to your board because I think some of you all felt blindsided when we came to you to talk about affordable housing and also the arts. And but I wonder, is there anything that your members, because your members really are a cross-section of the leadership of Ybor, is there anything that they think we're missing that we should be focused on, anything that we should be trying to do?
In terms of,
Like if they're talking about bringing in a downtown partnership, like what is it? The YCDC in the past kind of filled, I think, that role. It's a different organization now, but is there something that the downtown partnership offers that they feel like is not being offered by the Ybor Chamber or the CRA or any of the existing organizations?
I think that would actually left be best to the folks at the downtown and as to what they think and what way, shape, or form it would benefit us. That was certainly the way the conversation went in that short meeting. I say short meeting, it was probably less than an hour. And it was a meeting where candidly, we expressed questions, and I don't want to say they were concerns, but they were certainly unanswered questions that needed to be answered, such as vetting, such as particulars, such as input from the community in Ybor as to how it would or would not be received, and of course, principally, how, if there is an imposition of a particular tax, how one might be benefited by it. And none of those really questions were answered, and I guess they feel that those would be answered at these upcoming workshops. And I only received a notice yesterday that there are 3 workshops that, I don't know that, I know my board didn't know about them, and I certainly didn't know about them, but.
Thank you, sorry to put you on the spot.
And if I could just interrupt real quickly, what's being discussed is a potential expansion of what's called the Downtown Special Services District.
Correct.
There's a special assessment levied for services that are provided over and above what the city provides. The Downtown Partnership has requested that you all as City Council consider the possible expansion of that district. That would come up at a public hearing no later than March 1 if folks want to do it next year. There are questions and concerns about that, but really it's something that needs to be discussed and considered in your capacity as City Council members, really, not as CRA.
Yeah, my concern is, you think I'm wasting the time by asking this question? Is that your, my question to you is.
Who was that phrase?
Okay.
No, I just think it's ex parte communication.
It's not ex parte communication. I'm asking his input for what his board thinks about the idea, and more importantly, what they think is not being offered by Ybor City right now. I think it's a fair question because we've asked them to do things for us, like invest in affordable housing. I wonder, one of the pieces of feedback I've heard is that we're not there's not enough branding for Ybor City, and I know there's very limited money in the CRA budget, but I'm wondering. As you go out and I'll go out too, we'll hear feedback from folks about what they think is not being done. But we need to, whether this is the right solution or another, I think first we need to figure out what the constituents in Ybor think needs to be done. And if the YCDC or the CRA can resolve those, then we should look there.
The other thing I would just briefly mention too is that relative to imposing a special assessment that would include Ybor, one of the things, and we're going to, we need to just have further discussions with the partnership, that they need to evidence that what the services they're providing and the assessment they would be charging are proportional. So you can't, in order to impose a special assessment, you can't just impose a special assessment and not provide services. You've got to provide services that are commensurate to what the business owners or the property owners are paying as a special assessment. And those are things that we really don't have knowledge of at this point in time. So those are things that will come up and further discussions will occur before you and your capacity as City Council, but those are all very valid questions. So.
I have a couple other people though. Board Member Maniscalco.
I just want to thank you for this presentation.
You're welcome.
Our good friend Mayor Dick Greco has told me on several occasions there's no place in the world like Tampa and there's no place in the world like Ybor City. It's such a unique and special place, and we saw the changes in the mid-20th century with urban renewal of the damage that was done to Ybor. And for a lot of people, Ybor was dead for a long time. And then 20, 25 years ago, you saw a lot of the revitalization. But the renaissance that Ybor has been waiting for is happening now. And it's happening with programs and initiatives, as you've already talked about, because the arts are so critical and important. We could create an amazing arts district there in Ybor, but also with Gasworks and other projects that are coming in. Daryl Shaw was mentioned, and the investment that he's made, along with many other great leaders. Joe Capitano, I mean, I could go, Mr. Buckman, on and on and on. They have put their heart and soul into Ybor City because they understand the significance and importance. And this is such a cultural asset. You know, when you talk about the story of Tampa and the foundation of Tampa, you can't tell that story without Ybor City. So I think we're on the right path, and Ybor is going to be greater and more beautiful than it was 120 years ago. And I want to thank you for your leadership and your team and all your efforts. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Board Member Vieira.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. Steve, always wanted to thank you for all your hard work. Councilman Carlson mentioned your house. I think you're a land baron out there near Bay Shore, so God bless you for that. I see all the work that you do, and I know we should always be just in your debt. You don't get paid a dime for what you do, and just know that I appreciate it. With regards to Ybor City, a lot of interesting things happening out there. We'll be bringing up, I just wanted to note, after the council's done during motion time, something for the History Museum out there. To see if any available grants or programs or anything of that nature can go out there to help because it's so important for us to not just preserve our exterior history, but also to preserve our institutions and talk about that history. And the Ybor Museum obviously does such a great job in that. We're also looking at assistance for Martine Marcel as well, and that should be coming back to us hopefully within a couple of months. But just wanted to say thank you so much for all your work.
Well, you're welcome, and thank you, Louis, for that presentation with Martinez Ybor's great-great-grandson and the Purple Heart, and that was a wonderful event that you did there in Ybor City. It was certainly made me very, very proud to be a descendant of Ybor and having gone to school there at OLPH and born in the Gonzalez Clinic, so I can relate to all that.
Board Member Goods.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Mr. Carlson, thank you for bringing that up. Did receive calls in reference to that. And like Mr. Massey said, the services. You now have what is called a yellow team down in Ybor City now. You've got other things going on. So to me, Ybor and downtown are two different places. I don't think the business owners know that, or the homeowners know, because I believe downtown just does commercial on that. I don't think they do residential. And I think when you're talking about doing, assessing a tax of commercial and residential in Ybor, I think that's going to be a problem, a big problem. And people are calling about that. So glad to hear more conversations on that, but I think Ybor and downtown are two different places, in my opinion. Thank you, and thank you for your work you're doing, sir.
You're welcome.
Board Member Cedro.
Councilman Carlson, I meant no malice in my statement. I want to make my decision when I have everything in front of me. So I meant no malice. Steve.
Sir.
Man, the YCDC, excuse me, sorry about that. Ybor City CAC has come a long way. You and I served on it together, and I'm very proud of the work that has been accomplished by the CAC. And as far as the arts go, I am so glad to see that we're finally coming full circle. Back in 79, 80, when I was down there at friends like Carrie Glomst was doing one-act plays in buildings where the rain was coming through the roof, or artists like Theo Wojak were presenting his artworks down there in places that barely had any lighting.
Who, by the way, won the Gasparilla Arts Festival Award several times.
Yes. And then we had people opening small, eclectic art stores, and like Three Birds Bookstore. And then, of course, the anchor that's been down there forever, La France. So I know that people like ArtSpace are working with Daryl Shaw. I know Daryl Shaw has just opened up, a 50,000 square foot place down there that's going to show local artists and photography. So I'm grateful for the work that the CAC in Ybor City, CDC in Ybor City has done. Thank you, Steve, for all your hard work.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Courtney. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Corrine.
Board Member Miranda.
I was just going to keep quiet and listen, but you said two things.
Okay.
Gonzalez Clinic, and I remember there was a Dr. Barbas there.
Yes, sir.
That ain't a relative?
Yes, sir. Both Dr. Barbases were my relatives. Dr. Barbas El Viejo was at La Benefica, and his picture hung in Centro Español for about 30 years. And my father, Dr. Carlos Barbas, they were both Carlos Barbas. He was also known as Kiki. He was also a physician, and he was at Treyes Clinic, Centro Español, and Gonzalez Clinic, or Buen Público. And then he worked with Conchita Treyes and all the famous people that are like lifelong legends at Treyes Clinic.
Yeah, Dr. Rubio, Dr.
Right.
Gonzalez, Dr. Hernandez, and I remember, in fact, what they were doing back then is coming back again, where the doctors go to your
Sure.
house. And that was an amazing thing. For very little, they would give you care from start to end and send a doctor to your house if you called in. And
That was my father and my grandfather. We would go with them as kids when they would make their house calls.
more likely, he took care of me.
More than likely.
But thank you for saying everything about Ybor City. It's all factual, and it's coming back. Everything changes in life.
Sure.
And Ybor City's been through 2 or 3 different changes in the last 15, 20 years. And when it started, Greco's the one that started the old thing back in the 90s. And we were criticized for some things for bringing the assets to start it off. And there was 3 things, and I've said this, and I hope I don't insult anybody. Way back, when Ybor City went down, there was 3 things there: drug addicts, tumbleweed, and prostitution. And all that cleared out, then the artists came in, and they had a nice low rent until somebody opened up one bar. And then that bar became successful, and the artists had to leave because more bars came in for high rent. But it's coming back. There was very little population way back, and now it's very well populated, more likely going to get much more population. So Ybor City is coming back. The sidewalks are made like everybody wants them. They were made back 100 years ago. And never forget the Casino Theater. I thought I was a Mexican because I used to go, my grandmother used to tell me, Silly, Vitala, Mate, Tino, Guisa, and all them guys. I didn't know any better. So I started speaking in their dialect. But it was a wonderful area to grow up in, and there's nothing wrong with being a Mexican, let me say that. But it's a wonderful place to live because you have everything around you. At least we did. In every corner, every 2 blocks, you had a little grocery store. And you could buy things for $0.25, and you can't buy anything for $0.25 nowadays. But things change, but Ybor City still is in the heart of Tampa. Thank you very much for what you've done and your whole committee.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Just in response to that, and I won't keep anybody long, not only were my grandparents, my grandmother was a midwife and delivered babies, and I will be a docent in the architecture hop when they will be going to the La Benefica, which is now the Ybor HCC dance studio. And that was where my grandparents lived. They lived there for 35 years. And if someone had a medical emergency, all they had to do was ring the bell downstairs and they were taken care of upstairs. And my father grew up in that little building where there were 3 little apartments that they lived in. The other side, I will tell you, is my aunt and uncle had a grocery store on 7th Avenue. And their store started off as you had chickens, and you would buy your chickens inside their grocery store, and then give you the chickens. But then refrigeration came in, and they opened up a grocery store called the Four Roses that was there for about 35 years until they retired. And I grew up working at the grocery store until I started working at the hospital as an orderly at the Centro Español. So all good things, all good things. And I am very, very proud to be part of this community. And I am very grateful for what Mr. Carlson has asked us to investigate with regard to the arts, because I do think it's something that we need to, we're focusing quite a bit on culture. I think we need to do a little bit more with regard to the arts as well in Ybor City. But thank you for your time, appreciate it.
And thank you. We really appreciate it, and I echo everybody's comments. It's seeing Ybor, the revitalization has been absolutely wonderful, and the focus on the arts, I think, is absolutely a wonderful direction to go in. So thank you again for everything today. We really appreciate it.
Sure, my pleasure. Thank you.
Oh, yes, Board
Sorry,
Member
just
Carlson.
one thing for anybody who's watching. We talk about the arts, and sometimes people think, oh, art is something that's nice to have once you have all your basic needs covered. What we found throughout the region and other places, I've done a lot of roundtable discussions with chief information officers and CEOs of fast-growing tech companies. And in fact, on vacation a couple weeks ago, I had dinner every night on a cruise with a top person with who was with Amazon, now with Microsoft. And what these folks say universally is that the best coders, the best programmers, the best thinkers for technology, the best people who can think ahead of artificial intelligence were all trained in the arts. And their best programmers studied music. And I don't know what it is about the music that does it, but the arts are not just something that's nice to have. It's not just something to look at when you go there and buy a piece of art. It is something that we need to connect to all of the industries that are developing, to all the entrepreneurs. Right now, Ybor is a place where lots of creative industries are going, and also tech companies, defense contractors, and others. And the more we can cross-pollinate it, the more creative and competitive our own companies will be. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So I'm requesting that you consider the down payment assistance, expansion of the down payment assistance program in East Tampa CRA for $400,000. I'm going to invite Mr. Drumgo up to talk to you, to give you a little more details, but this was brought before the CAC on 2 different occasions where quorum was broken intentionally not to move this item forward. There were comments and concerns about who were being the beneficiaries of this program, but if it's any indication if the program is working or not, we have to resupply the funding in this program. So we are putting people in homes, we are using the programs, and I'll let Mr. Drumgo talk to you a little bit more about the details, but I would respectfully ask your approval so that we can continue. We do have people in the queue right now that are requesting or needing down payment assistance in purchasing a home, but we ran out of money. And so I'm respectfully asking for your approval. I'll let Mr. Drumgo speak now.
Like that red blazer, I tell you.
Thank you. Let me see if I can get the Elmo, please.
One of my nice colors, Mr. Guido. He's an alpha guy, so you don't like that too much.
That's right. Well, I love the color. I do love it. Let's see. Oh, you said just press the button. Yeah, it didn't look up on the top. Okay, thank you. Okay. Perfect. All right. Deputy Administrator Elise Drumgo. I just want to speak a little bit to the down payment assistance program. I know that the CAC had a lot of questions the other day. I think at the initial meeting when this was presented in December, a lot of the CAC members had questions about who were the recipients of these dollars. And there was a lot of discussion about ethnic background and race, and you know, there were some comments made that these funds aren't really going to help people who look like the community, or it's not reflective of the community. And so I just want to point out that, you know, over the last 3 years, you know, through your down payment assistance program, you've been able to support and assist 26 African-American families. So I would say about 80% of your recipients have been either Black or identify as Hispanic, and then we have another category. And then you expended about $885,000 over that time frame. Currently, you have 11 people in the queue, which will get you to a total of 45 recipients. And ideally, we'll expend all this money this fiscal year and get you to about $1.2 million. So, you know, in the previous meeting just this week, before folks stepped away from the table, they moved the goalpost again and said that they hadn't received any reports on who is receiving these dollars, and Manager McCray compiled these statistics to share them. But I have committed to providing them with a detailed report with a little bit more information down the road, and working with the staff to implement that reporting process on a monthly basis so that they can receive some idea of what the people look like and what the homes look like. But at the end of the day, you can see that this program is good for the community, and one of the tenets of the CRA is to to support affordable home ownership. And I think that helping families gain an important asset, a home that often leads to generational wealth and equity, is something that I think this board would support. So, we're asking for the $400,000 so that we can move it in and continue this program, because we do have 11 pending closings.
Board Member Goods.
I think the issue is transparency. People don't see what they don't know. And I think now the phone calls I made, and after talking to Mr. Drumgo, we're going to provide that now so they can see up front. Again, taking photos of those homeowners, be it black, white, green, or purple, but taking those photos, inviting them to those ribbon cuttings, or when someone is able to get that money, this is the person who got this money, they feel they don't know that their dollars are working for them. And I think when you explain that to some of the stakeholders that called you and some of your members, we agreed that sometimes we don't know until something happens. So now we know we need to do a little bit better job. You have East Tampa has a housing person. With now the money that's been allocated for housing, I believe, I'm waiting to hear what that structure is going to be for the CAC as a whole, because you need to have somebody accountable for housing now, because we've asked for those dollars to be allocated for housing. So I think now going forward, people know where that money's going, how it's being spent. It is CAC, not the HCD, but this is what CAC did, or East Tampa, Ybor, whatever, what they did, and they get that accolade. That's what it's about. Again, they're getting that accolade, making sure that, hey, we did this, we're a viable board, this is what we're doing for the community. Everybody wants their plug, and rightfully so. And I think that's what has to kind of happen sometimes now moving forward. So I'm glad that you were able to call some of those folks who were, ringing the alarm. And sure. I think I understand they feel a little bit better now that you're going to do what you said you're going to do, because you've been doing it, and they trust you, because every time you tell me you're going to do something, you do it. And that's noteworthy.
I'm going to respectfully request a motion to, for the $400,000.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Board Member Maniscalco, seconded by Board Member Miranda. Roll call vote.
You're going to break it?
Carlson? Yes. Goods?
Yes.
Vera? Maniscalco?
Yes.
Miranda?
Yes.
Citro?
Yes.
Hurtak?
Yes.
Motion carried, anonymous with Vera being not to vote.
Thank you.
Madam Chairwoman,
Yes,
just
Board
allow
Member
me-
Goods.
And we don't want the CEC to feel that we're overriding them, because they are advisory board. But right now, housing is the main issue. You got people that are on the line right now with the financing and things like that. And you have 11 people in the queue. We have no money, and I just can't sit by and have 11 people in the queue. And right now they're at the financing stage, and we can't give them money. So that's my rationale for voting. We can go forward now to give them what they're asking for, and now the process can move a little bit better. But again, like I said, I'm waiting to hear the structural side of how we're going to run this housing program with our CECs, because I think that needs to be a key component so people can know how the money's being spent and the initiatives that are going on.
It's a perfect segue. So I was going to ask if I could just have a moment before we go back to the printed agenda. I am bringing forward a proposed restructure and a proposed date or couple of dates for a retreat for the board moving forward. So I just want to lay the foundation before we get into it next month, because next month is not going to be just a restructuring of staff, adding staff, and moving people to the right places. But I also need to talk to you about the CAC meetings that we have in the subcommittee meetings, and we've asked all of our CRA managers to give us an accounting of how many meetings they serve every month. And you would be surprised that in one calendar year, we service over 200 meetings. And when you add that by the number of staff members, times that by 2 hours per meeting, we're talking about almost 900 work days of staff servicing just meetings. And so when you talk about getting things done and moving things forward, the staff is burdened, and I'm gonna say burdened, by writing, that's not even writing minutes, following up on action. I'm talking about just going to the meetings. It's almost 900 days of going to meetings in one calendar year of all your staff. And so that's not sustainable. And so as this board considers redirecting, adding staff, and repositioning people, I need you to really consider the number of CAC meetings and subcommittee meetings that your staff that's sitting behind me and the other members on their team that are supporting. It's not sustainable, and we won't be able to make the kind of impact that we need to make moving forward. So I just wanted to lay that foundation that when I do the presentation next month, the motion calls for budget and staffing restructure, but I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the inefficiencies and make some suggestions for us moving forward. It's quite the lift in just trying to figure out how we're going to make these changes while keep the train moving at the same time and serving the community. But you're committed to it, we're committed to it, and so I'll bring those things to you next month. I just wanted you to be prepared that it's beyond just adding staff that I need to have. It's a difficult conversation I need to have with you.
Board Member Hughes.
I'm looking for implementation now. Got a lot of programs on the shelf, and some of the CECs have been playing, well, it's here, and I think you're right. It's time to implement, to get the train moving. And I think, meetings are good, but I think however you're gonna categorize whatever committees they have to break them down so they can meet and still have the input of what the community of that section wants, I think is great. And then when you talk about the staff, to where you've got a housing staff for all your CACs, I mean, that way everyone's working in the same channel. You know what I'm doing, we all know what we're doing. Somebody may have some different ideas from different areas, but we're putting it all on the board. That's real management. It's real management. And when you're talking about a tree program, if East Tampa has one, I'm sure West Tampa can use that. Some other areas can use the same thing. So let's not keep inventing it. It's there. It's already on the table. We have this already. We can just plug it right in and keep it rolling. So I'm glad that you're looking at that. I think that's needed. Still get the input from those different communities or whatever, but still I think bringing it all in and having staff concentrate on programs and implementation is going to move, especially the East Tampa CRA. That is the key. With all these programs on the shelf, they need to be implemented. So I thank you for that. I will support the motion. So you're looking for you're looking for the motion, correct?
I think you carried the motion. I was just giving you that information before I brought it to you next month. So no motion right now. Going to the printed agenda right now, item number 2, there is a memo from Chief of Staff Bennett requesting that this agenda item be continued to March 9th CRA meeting to align with the service agreement that we need to modify for the current fiscal year. And I'm going to just tell you right now before I bring it to you that I'm asking you to modify the services agreement for fiscal year 23 and 24, just so that we don't have to bring it right back to you. We're already midway through 23. It will be retro, and if we could do an 18-month services agreement, please. So.
Board Member Good.
I'm confused. That's not what we asked for in reference to you and Mr. Drummond getting paid. We make exceptions for every other thing in the city when it comes to changing names of areas, personnel, dollars and cents. This board is responsible for your pay. And I'm confused why this has been kicked down the can so long. I know you guys are overworked, working 15, 16 hours a day because you're doing the city work and you're doing CRA business. And you've been doing a great job getting this stuff out. And it's unfair that I don't understand how in the world that money has already been allocated and set for a director. And how you can't take that money and prorate what you both have been doing and pay you is beyond me. I will not be supporting this. You want to bring a physical budget back for 2024 is fine, but I don't see how this even impacts what the original motion was made to talk about a new contract coming forward. I don't understand that. I can't support this. Mr. Massey, you're a CRA attorney at this particular point, not the city attorney. And it's my understanding that this CRA is responsible for the budget and dollars and cents. Is that correct, sir?
The way that the CRA is staffed is through the services agreement. The city provides the services through city employees. So it is that is the vehicle by which we set what the CRA is going to pay for those services. The FY22 services agreement is done. The FY22 budget is done. So the vehicle by which you can address salaries and how they're compensated is through the services agreement. So that is why this is being continued.
But what my question is still, we're gonna wait to pay somebody down the road for 5-6 months worth of work? That's the problem I have. That's like if I've gone to work, I wanna be paid. So if I'm working, why I wanna wait 5 or 6 months?
Well, the other thing, and I did explain this to you initially as well, they are also city employees, and so they're subject to the personnel policies, and this does impact certain of the policies in the personnel policy. So the chief of staff is trying to work with HR and budget to make sure that what he does is appropriate given the parameters of the overall city HR policy. So those are the two things he's working within, and so we need to do it in the context of the agreement between this board and the city that's agreeable to both parties. And he also has to weigh, if you all just do something unilaterally, then that may affect what happens on the city side of things as well, so on the personnel side.
All right, so with saying that, and we're talking about a service agreement, we're saying that, I want to make sure that we have a buffer or a policy in place within that service agreement, so in case this may happen again,
Well, that's one of the reasons why, frankly, it probably does need to take place in the context of the services agreement, because what happened last fiscal year is happening again. One of the reasons we held up doing the services agreement is because you all were interviewing for a CRA director. So we thought we would have a director online, and then that would affect the agreement and how people are compensated and how the money would flow. So we're back in a very similar circumstance here, so that's one of the reasons that needs to be addressed. So we're not going back and forth. Everyone agrees to the terms and how that's going to work.
I just want to make sure, if you're going to do this, I want to make sure that they're compensated from the time they took over to whatever your new service agreement is, to where their property, I mean, not no 4%, that their property is compensated.
Again, I mean, I want to make sure this is done correctly and legally. That's what I'm trying to do. How that works out percentage-wise or dollar-wise, then I would encourage you to have a direct conversation with the chief of staff about that and with HR, and so we can make, because I don't want to have to go back and forth and negotiate this up here, because that's not, I mean, we need to get.
That'll be fine. I want to make sure that happens, that we meet with the chief of staff and Kelly Austin, because they need to be paid for the work they've done.
Board Member Carlson.
I agree with Board Member Goods. We've in a way committed this already to two people who are working really hard for us, and they're selfless and would probably say, "Oh, don't trouble with it." But I would ask Chief of Staff and legal staff to be creative about looking at this. I understand that we're outsourcing this to the city, and the city has to follow their own rules. But my experience in the private sector dealing with organizations, if you have some services outsourced to an organization and you want to give somebody a bonus, you go to the CEO or manager of that business and say, do you want me to, is it okay if I give a bonus, and do I need to give it through your company, or can I give it to them separately? And typically they say it's okay to give it to them separately. In this case, we've got city contracts, and so an idea would be for the city to simply write a letter to the CRA chair saying, we give you permission to give a bonus to our employees, and that's separate from the city contracts, because then it's not going through the city, it's just the CRA doing it directly. And then they probably would be responsible for their own payroll taxes and everything, but there's got to be some creative way of doing it. Thank you.
If I may, I'm not speaking to the issue at all. I'm speaking because I have to bring you back a services agreement. And Mr. Massey brought up the fact that we were working on a services agreement, and we stopped that when we were doing the recruitment for the CRA director. And so since we have to bring that back to you, if there were some, I do have notes on from that CRA meeting that we had at the convention center, that there were some comments on things that we could modify in our services agreement. If you have changes that you want to make in the services agreement, unrelated, I'm not speaking about this item, we need to know, because we're bringing this back to you in March, and any modifications to that agreement, I need that to be communicated to us, sir, so that we can
Board Member
actually work on
Carlson.
documents.
I just want to ask a question, and not to go deep into it, but just quick overview. The service agreement amount increased the last time. You're in a different effort looking at staffing. I think you kind of were just making a case that we need more staffing. I think in some areas we're looking at maybe we're overstaffed. So I think I would rely on your expertise to look at that, to judge if we need to move people around or reallocate resources or whatever. But do you think that it's going to be substantially higher in the amount? And what is it, like 2.5 million or something?
No, it's more like 3. It's more like 3.
And do you think,
million.
what do you
Yes,
think
it'll
it's
be
going to be?
higher.
Much higher?
Yes.
Okay.
Board Member Miranda.
Well, we have the two individuals that are most affected right here. Are you in any way not willing to wait 30 days or whatever it takes to solve this?
Listen, regarding this motion, I have always said that I am not speaking on it.
Well, I understand that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
I got it.
Yeah.
You're right. I'm sorry, I apologize, but.
No. I'm just saying that
No, I
30
understand.
days, 60 days, 365 days. I'm not going to ever speak on this. This is self-serving for me to
I understand
discuss that.
and I appreciate your stance.
Okay.
Okay.
I need a motion.
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion by Board Member Citro and seconded by Board Member Maniscalco. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes,
And
Board
the
Member
only reason I'm
Hughes.
gonna support it, I hear Mr. Massey's rationale on it, I don't totally agree on it, but I'm gonna support it for the administration to come back with making sure that it is fair and that we can add what we need to add into that service agreement, and also that you will be compensated for the work you, Mr. Drone, will be done. That's very important that you're compensated for the work you have done. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item that I have for you is, it was a motion made at a meeting for an update on what's happening with the Tampa Theater investments and when improvements can be started. And so, just to remind you, with the Tampa Theater, we were on pause for a bit because we did not own the entire piece. There was a quick take, eminent domain proceeding that went forth that we recently settled within, I want to say, the last 60 days, that we were able to now own the entire thing. I've met with John Bell right before, Elise Drumgo and I met with John Bell right before the holidays, talking about their 100th anniversary is coming up. It's really cool if the theater would be restored, and all of the renovations and small expansion that they have, that they're planning, is done before their 100th anniversary. So we've met with them, trying to understand what the costs are. We did have very little money in a specific line item for Tampa Theater. I'm not saying that we can't do it. We were waiting for this condemnation process to take place. I have another meeting scheduled with John Bell this Friday to work through the numbers. As you very well know, the cost of construction is increasing by the second. And so we want to make sure that they're set up for success. I'm gonna just take this point to tell you that there are other cultural institutions and nonprofit organizations that are looking for assistance moving forward shortly. So I've committed to you to look at your downtown channel side budgets and what has been committed, and look at that projection over a period of time. I think we have it for maybe 3 years. I'd like to start looking at our CIPs for more like 10 years to see what those commitments are. The Tampa Theater and the other requests that you will be getting soon are asking for this money to be front-loaded, for any assistance that is provided to be front-loaded. So I anticipate that we will have a request and possibly an agreement brought to you by February or March CRA meeting. But other than that, I don't have much more details to add to that, except that we're looking at the budget to make sure that any commitments that you make to these organizations, that we have the cash flow to be able to do that.
Board Member Carlson.
Yeah, thank you for that update. We were all briefed on this a couple years ago, and I was told at the time that it was in 2 or 3 different accounts in our budget, and I think everybody was briefed on that. If not for this lease issue underneath, we would have approved it and they would have been paid a couple years ago. I think we all love the Tampa Theater. I think there's nobody in town that doesn't love the Tampa Theater. I don't think it's controversial in any way to support Tampa Theater. In the 80s, I think I've said this before, but in the 80s, somebody went through to clean off the dust. They spray washed the plaster and other things. And so a few years ago, the Tampa Theater went through and restored the lobby and also all the plaster pieces in the lobby. And there are specialist painters and consultants who do that. One of them happens to live in this area. But it is a very specific kind of thing. And if the problem is that because of the revenue model of the theater, it's not like Stratton or others where it can bring in huge volumes of money. And they're monetizing it. I think you're on the board, right? Yep. I'm not on the board. I've never sat on the board. But they can bring in money, but they can't bring in the kind of money that it takes to fully restore this. And this is such an important Tampa jewel. There are not many of these in the country left. The sign is one of the 2 or 3 key actual icons of the city. I think that because of our kind of verbal commitment a couple years ago, we need to move this as quickly as possible. I would suggest, and keep in mind that we are all up for re-election. We don't know what's going to happen. This board could be exactly the same, or it could be very different after May 1st. So I would like to make a motion to have CRA staff work with Tampa Theater to come back to us at the next CRA meeting with a proposed plan outline, budget, and draft agreement.
I think we do that.
If we do that in February, Morris, do we have to approve it twice? Do we have to approve an agreement twice?
No, it just has to be approved.
If we
by
come back
motion.
and
You would have to then, the only other action that would have to be taken is that if it affects a change in your approved budget, then that would have to come back to you through as city council to move the money into the correct account. So.
Okay, but the reason why I think we ought to have a draft agreement, ideally we'd be able to approve it in February, and I would ask everybody if you're in favor of this, or even if you're not, ask lots of questions behind the scenes. But so that we can approve it. If there's anything that holds it up, we only have 2 more shots to get it done before this council officially is over. Or this board officially is over, sorry.
You wanna make your motion now, or?
Yeah. So that's my motion. Did you get that? Sorry. To come back with a plan outline, budget, and draft agreement between CRA and Tampa Theater at the February CRA board meeting.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Board Member Carlson, seconded by Board Member Miranda. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Good morning again. Let's see if we can have the PC. So I have a presentation before you today. In August, the board asked that staff appear and provide an update on the mapping of city-owned properties and land trust concepts. And so today, I've put together one presentation, but it's broken up, and I'll walk you through the staff's efforts to establish the community land trust, providing you with an update on the actions and the next steps. And then I'll provide you with an update on the process that staff went through to identify the land we intend to designate for affordable housing with a timeline for adoption, while giving you a preview of a public-facing dashboard that staff has developed. If you recall, Administrator Travis provided a presentation to you all back in June of last year with a comprehensive housing strategy, and she actually highlighted the need for a new fund for affordable housing to promote ownership through a CLT and other models. And at that time, she shared with you the dual land trust model, in which she highlighted the City of Tampa's need for a land trust, but then also a model that allowed for other community organizations to operate as land trusts as well. And so when she mentioned that strategy, that was option 3 on the big board here, if you're looking at it. But we were, going full bore ahead with that third option, and we were really looking at having those community-based organizations operating. But we really quickly learned that it's difficult to do that unless you have a prime organization that can provide technical assistance to those entities. And so with that, we want to run a little bit harder at option number 2. Okay, and so option number 2, for us, it would require us to develop a standalone entity, a community-based organization that would be incubated by both the city and the CRA, where we focus on building capacity for other organizations. And that way we do have that expert group in sort of, I won't even say in-house because it is a standalone group, but we have that expert entity that's out there doing some of the work as well. So with that, standing up the CLT is a multi-phase process. And to date, we've actually looked at in our first piece, we broke it up into 3 phases, but in the first piece, we looked at it as what's the most appropriate model for us to implement the community land trust, but then also from that process and looking at option number 2, where we have that new community-based organization, it's, drafting the bylaws and the organizational structure, also a draft of ground leases that would need to accompany the land trust. So providing some of that upfront legwork so that we can really look at the operational capacity of the land trust, but then also looking at the recruitment piece for recruiting board members for that entity. Okay. So I mentioned to you that we've broken it up into phases, and so we've completed phase 1. We're looking at phases 2 and 3 at this time. And the current scope of work is $45,000, and that's in partnership with the Florida Housing Coalition. And I think Administrator Travis presented back in June as well that the city will commit to future housing funds to supporting a land trust and capacity building as well. But looking at these final 2 phases of your land trust and the implementation, we're looking to operationalize a land trust, which is 20 to 24 weeks. Okay, so it is a process. And for us, it's setting the expectations and then going through to finalize all the bylaws and the governance structure of the CLT. Also, we want to develop a resale formula because that resale formula is really critical to understanding the participation and the value that an owner would receive once they buy into the land trust as well. So again, we will focus heavily on a subsidy analysis as well in phase 2, and that subsidy analysis will allow us to look at the land assets, grant funding, and also the city and CRA available funding, just looking at that as a whole to figure out how we would operationalize and support community land trusts. But then also recruiting a board of directors to come out and do the work. And so with a CLT, the goal is to have a set of experts that also sit beside residents that live within the CLT. So initially, that setup may be an advisory committee of 4 people that will then build out the rest of that advisory board collectively in having some low-income residents or moderate-income residents on the board, depending on what the bylaws state. Okay. And then lastly, phase 3 is an implementation piece, and I have the asterisk there because it's part of this is 16 weeks. We want to continue to move pretty rapidly towards standing up the CLT, but there's a true need to establish a non-for-profit that will operate the CLT, but also there's a piece that the program planning and then creating those overall operational policies. But one of the key pieces is hiring an executive director for that CLT. And so, standing it up is really dependent upon being able to find that executive director. Staff has looked at some different models, and we've seen where CLT was able to go forward operationally without an executive director, with some consultant in place to make sure it moves forward until you find the right person to fill that role. But that's typically that 16-week timeline is dependent upon the hiring of that executive director. So really just want to leave you with a few takeaways, right, and next steps and where we go. I've shared with you the timeline over the next 40 weeks that we'll work through to set up, finalize the CLT. But what we're looking for is support for the recommended structure that we have, that the CLT be a standalone entity. But then also, something that we've seen that's worked in other cities, particularly in Jacksonville, where the municipality, the body has adopted a first option policy for the CLT to have access to property that's acquired by the city. And so that gives the CLT a good base and a foundation for property and assets to go out and do its job. And then also it prioritizes the affordable piece. And then again, just really leveraging those assets and consider funding for operational costs and ongoing capacity building for the land trust itself once it's established. As a board, you all have set up or set aside 30% of your funding in order to address affordable housing. You did that in fiscal year 23. We really haven't made any commitments beyond that, and so I think that you want to be thinking about in the future how you allocate those funds and whether or not a portion of your CRA funding would be set aside to support, or whether that be acquisition or operations of the CLT. And then I'll stop here and stand for any questions if you have any, or comments.
Board Member Goods.
So we're talking about a total year before operational setup, correct?
Approximately, that's right.
And you feel comfortable with the outline that you presented, that this is going to be able to move us where we need to be?
I do feel comfortable with it. I mean, the Housing Coalition, I'm not, far be it from me to tell you I'm a land trust expert. Right? The Housing Coalition is our expert on this, and they're our expert group, and they've shared with us some timelines that they have and the capacity building of other organizations that they've worked with throughout the state. They're very good at what they do, and so I'm comfortable with the timeline.
And the reason I say that, when I went on that trip to Chicago, it was a very worthwhile trip, and that's why I learned about the land trust. That's why I learned about it. And other places are doing well with it. There are other places in Florida that's doing very well with it as well. So I think it's a key function, and hopefully that, I trust what Mr. Drumgo is saying, and him and Ms. Travis have not let us wrong yet. They've been upfront and transparent with us, so I'd be willing to support it.
Yes. Board Member Carlson.
2 or 3 questions, maybe mainly for Morris. When the money from the city or CRA is put into this nonprofit, then by law, we don't have any influence except by contract after that, correct? We don't have any direct influence over the nonprofit.
Correct. I mean, this would all have to be set out, and what we would have to negotiate an agreement with this not-for-profit entity that would set out the terms by which we would be willing to give money or property, and how that would operate and what our expectations would be. That's how we would have to govern that, basically.
And then, since these may end up involving 99-year leases or something like that, how do we, it's called a trust, but is there some formal legal entity that this nonprofit would hold, or that it would that we would put the money into? Is it an actual kind of trust that it would be very limited in how the property would be used and disposed of?
Yes, I mean, I think the whole idea is the independent entity would be essentially the land trust, and so the property would be owned by the land trust and be subject to the agreement with the city and the CRA. It would also, it would have to operate so that long-term the property would always, the fee would always be owned by the land trust. I think the concept is that you would then, give these long-term ground leases to people which are akin to fee ownership, so that it's not quite fee, but it's very close to fee. That's the whole.
I don't know if you've seen the movie The Art of the Steal, or any of the late kind of cases on people who had estates who put directives on estates, and then people found ways to work around them. Is there any kind of legal protection with a particular kind of entity that we would put this in, other than, like, if we just put the money in a nonprofit, somebody eventually could take over the nonprofit and change it and own the property, right? Is there some special protection that would last more than 100 years?
I mean, typically what we would do, well, more than 100 years, I'm not sure. I mean, we'd have to think about that. There's the rule against perpetuities. There's some legal concepts that we'd have to deal with. But long term, what we would be saying is, we are giving this property and this money to you all to operate for this specific purpose. For instance, whenever we partner with a developer who's providing affordable housing units as part of their project, we impose covenants and restrictions that are enforceable by the city, saying we're giving you this money or we're doing this for this specific purpose, and in return you're going to guarantee that these units are going to be leased or sold or conveyed to people who meet certain income restrictions, and so it stays at an affordable level. I think that's part of the idea behind the land trust, is that I think one of the things that Mr. Drumgo mentioned is the resale provision. We don't, folks will want to be able to convey their ground lease to other folks, but there has to be a set formula that when they buy into the land trust, that they're aware of, that they can't go above. There's a percentage levels to keep the price of that unit affordable, and that it's owned by folks that meet certain income restrictions. So that
And you talked about the law of perpetuities, which I hadn't heard of before, and we can talk about more of this offline, but it would at least allow us to set it up such that they could have 99-year leases, right?
Yes, yes.
And then my other question is, once the initial board is established, then the nonprofit will be self-governing, or who would pick the board members? And then my other question is, who picks the initial executive director and board?
Well, that's all subject to, I think, what Mr. Drumgo is going to be putting together. I think the initial board, if it's all going to be financed by the city and the CRA, then the city and the CRA would then agree to how that process would work and how that initial board is selected. I think that board probably ultimately would be self-perpetuating, perhaps, maybe not. Maybe there would be certain members on that board that would be subject to approval by you all as CRA and by the city. There's different ways to set it up. So I think that's all part of what Mr. Drumgo is going to have to put together and come forward and present to you as a package. So, but there's different options.
Yeah, and ultimately, this is my last comment or question. Ultimately, this will be its own nonprofit, and ultimately we all are part of the city and the CRA. But we know from experience that the public wants to know what the difference is between the CRA and the city. And so to the extent that the city is participating in this, or we're commingling funds, I would ask that we separately identify the CRA, and if you as you're putting together, if you're establishing an initial board, this is not like city council and the mayor appointing people. It is the city and CRA board. City council may also have some initial appointments, but we need to be very careful about how we set this up. We need to make sure that it's diverse, that it doesn't represent any particular interest, especially corporate interests, and we need to set it up so that it's not political. If there are appointees for the initial board, we need to make sure that there's at least one for every city council member or CRA board member. And then if the mayor has appointees, then we have to figure out how many of that. But we need to make sure that it represents the diversity of the community. If, for example, one person picks the board, and there's nobody from New Tampa, or nobody from West Tampa, or nobody from South Tampa, then we don't have geographic diversity in it. So we need to make sure at least the initial board is set up for success. It also needs to not be influenced by any particular nonprofits or any other particular government agencies that may be working on affordable housing right now. I think it's important that it be independent and that it be able to partner with these other organizations, but it shouldn't provide any preference for any of them. There are lots of nonprofits, for-profits, others that are trying to build affordable housing, and as of right now, you're not talking about aligning it with any particular organization. We need to make sure that we protect its independence and neutrality. Thank you.
What are the next steps?
Well, if I may, and I'll speak to some of what Attorney Massey said. We are looking at this in a way that we don't have a set of bylaws that will, create any conflict. And so we are looking at structures that'll allow us to select a board without having to worry about appointees from the mayor or the council. And so we like to pull this board together initially in a way that ultimately it'll fill itself out. And the goal is to pick a set of experts from specific areas that represent, or would contribute mightily to the success of the CLT once it gets off the ground. So we are looking at, you made some great points, Councilman Carlson, and so we're looking at that, and all of that will get drafted out via the bylaws. I think that once we meet with the Housing Coalition at our next steps to really work through how we'll hammer out the timeline for phase 2, where we're coming up with those final documents, I can come back and present the final draft or the final draft of those documents to you so that you understand how the organization will be structured. And then once we stand it up, of course, you'll be aware of the timeline for that process as well. So we'll keep you well informed. I don't need a motion. This is just all informational. Again, timeline for us is about 40 weeks to get through the end of this process, but we can come back to you in the next 6 weeks before we hit phase 3 and we're ready to stand it up.
Absolutely.
One last thing. Cities in Europe, even if you look at Harvard Square in Boston, places like Singapore, they think in hundreds of years instead of 5 or 10 years. And we've had discussions here about whether we should have 20 or 30-year plans, and some people think that's too far out to look. But other cities are looking 200 or 300 years in the future. We don't know what everything is going to be like, but I think we need to always have that really long-term plan, especially if we have 99-year leases. I mean, we're asking people to trust us that we're going to protect the land underneath the house they're going to build, and or developers if they're going to build something multi-story. And so we need to not be thinking in 5 or 10 years, but think in 200 years. And there may be some legal restrictions on how we can do that, but we need to have a really, really long-term view. Thank you.
Thank you. Well,
Great.
I'll present to you now the second half of this, the motion, which is we're looking at the land piece, right? And so I think the board was asking staff to come back with a view of surplus property to be utilized for affordable housing. And so I'll just go here and give you some background here on, how we ended up taking the list of properties that the city owns and turning them into a mapping component in a dashboard, which I'll present to you when as I wrap up. But there is really a perception that the city owns a ton of property, and they're not wrong. But I think that it's not always readily available to the public, and there's no space where an individual can go and really look at what the property that the city owns. So by statute, we're actually required to publish a list of properties that we intend to designate for affordable housing every 3 years. And we really have yet to do that. And so when we started on this process, we wanted to end at that list as a final product. And so if you look at the funnel here, our real estate department, I just want to commend our real estate director, Michelle Van Loan, for the work that she put in on this. They started with a sum of 4,000 records, all city properties, and then filtered that down and whittled it down to get us to a list of about 32 parcels. So the way we sifted through this, we took out all the parking lots, all the right-of-ways, all the alleys. Then we eliminated those properties with city facilities on them or with structures on them being utilized for operations. We also eliminated the parks, stormwater ponds, drainage areas. And then from there, we removed any properties that are being leased to third parties. And then we removed any properties that are designated for future use for infrastructure, mobility purposes, in any properties with environmental concerns, or those properties that we call uneconomic remainders that are potentially too small for development. So with that, we ended up with a list that we sat down and we did an administrative review. And to be completely transparent about the process, we had about 101 properties on that list when we got to the end of this list, but you only see 32 there as what we deem ready to go for affordable housing. And part of that is because we looked at it and we said, well, we've got about 34 properties that we think would be better suited with additional acquisition of adjacent property, or it may be better utilized for economic development purposes. And so we thought it beneficial for us to hold that property off the list, okay? And then there were about 17 properties that we had that'll be utilized for the Infill 3 program, which will be forthcoming here this spring. And lastly, we had about 18 properties that there's just too many challenges, whether it be zoning or different adjacent uses, that we saw some conflicts, or we had conflicts with titles, and so we didn't want to integrate those properties because we felt like they would have too many challenges to designate it for this list for this purpose at this time, but we can always go back and review and add those properties. So with that, we brought it down to 32, and I'll prepare to exit the presentation to show you a map of the dashboard, but you know, part of this process in presenting this list to you today and presenting the map to you today is so that we can get to the end goal of adopting a formal list. And so the steps in that process here, what we recommend to you, and ideally you will ultimately will come back to council, we'll present this information to you as a council. You'll set it for public hearing and review the list, come up with a final list, and then we'll adopt that list with a resolution. So I will exit the presentation now, and I'll show you the dashboard that we developed, unless you want me to stop for some questions.
Board Member Maniscalco.
When you say 32 properties ready to go, are those just for single-family homes? Are they large enough to be duplexes, triplexes? I mean, what is the size of, what are the sizes that are available?
So they vary, and so I think that we can have a combination of those. I can get you all a distribution of what we've projected as the number of units we may obtain, but ultimately, you know, some of them have trees on them, and there are some other site analysis, I think, that need to be completed, and that's best suited for a developer to determine, but we can give you a rough estimation of what that might look like.
Thank you.
Sure. All right. So let me exit here. All right, so here is a snapshot of the dashboard. Okay. And just to walk you through it really quickly, to the left of the screen, you see that we have a breakdown of city-owned lots, and again, this is the 32 that we've whittled it down to. We've broken this out by city council district. There are also some additional functions that we have here on the map, and so I'll just go to some of these layers here. But we can turn on the various overlay districts so that any person looking at this map could also see where there might be additional development criteria, and I can just toggle those on and off, okay? You're also able to see city council districts if we broke them out, okay, to show by district where those properties are located, and then also the community redevelopment areas as well, so that any person interested would know if it were sitting in a CRA area. So we have these additional layers. And then if one were curious enough to click on the one particular property here, they would receive the address, the council district, the CRA information, whether or not the property was acquired with some CRA funding, and also whether or not it's in an opportunity zone, the census tract, and the zoning on the property with the lot sizes. So some pretty basic information for someone who's interested in developing these properties. And we do have a front-end user dashboard, and then we have a back-end dashboard for staff. So ideally, as we continue to develop this list, acquire property, we can update this list annually, bring it back to council, to you all as a council, so that you can annually adopt this list of properties that we intend to make available for affordable housing. So that does conclude it, and I'll take any questions on the mapping if you all have any.
I have a question. Wouldn't these be properties we would target to go into the land trust?
So you could. You could preserve these properties for the land trust. I think, and I'll defer to Attorney Massey on this, but I don't think the designation for affordable housing will prevent you from also considering them for land trust purposes.
No, that's correct. And just to clarify, if any of these properties are acquired with CRA funds, that has to come to you as the CRA before it's disposed of. And if the property is located within a community redevelopment area, we would have to do an RFP by state law before we could dispose of the land. So just putting them on the list does not mean they're out the door.
Okay, so hold that thought for just a second. So you're saying that before we get rid of land that the city owns, we have to put it through an RFP?
By state law, any land, and we lost, this was a case that the city of Tampa was directly involved with, any property that's owned by the city or the CRA or any government entity that's located within a community redevelopment area, there has to be an RFP issued, there has to be a notice published before we can enter a contract to convey that property. So,
But just curiously, because I've actually had quite a few phone calls about this recently, what about just getting rid of land that's not necessarily in a CRA?
we have a land disposition policy, and it breaks down property based on categories. If it's just a generally marketable piece of property, then generally we also require in our land disposition policy that there be an RFP. If it's an uneconomic remainder, then we give preference to property owners that own the property adjacent to it, and it doesn't have to go through the RFP process. And if we're looking for affordable housing and it's outside of the CRA, we can negotiate specifically with that developer and not have to go through the RFP process if it's for affordable housing.
But generally speaking, we shouldn't, I mean, I've been hearing about particular properties that were basically given away for pennies on the dollar by executive order.
The city, any conveyance of city property by deed or by contract, it has to come before you all as city council. So it can't happen unless that's presented to you all. And there is a policy in place where that's how it's supposed to be dealt with. Now,
Well, it's supposed to be.
it is. I mean, the mayor cannot just sign a deed deeding property by executive order. It has to come to you all.
Board Member Carlson.
No, but I don't know that that's happened so much under this administration, but when we first started, they were still trickling through before this administration had fully taken over. Early, there was, on, I think the consent agenda, I can't remember exactly the details, but there was a contract to dispose of 3 single-family properties in East Tampa, and there was only one bidder, and the bid was 0. And so after we approved it, I called several of the nonprofit home organizations, and they said, we didn't even know that it was available. And that got back to my arguments in the beginning about we need to advertise RFPs, and we need to make sure, that they're, I don't know that this administration does, but there are arguments in the past about targeted RFPs. If you have an RFP and you don't advertise it and you don't tell everybody about it, then only one bidder comes in. We need to make sure that that whatever RFPs we do are completely advertised. If somebody wants to come in, if we want to put it in land trust and somebody wants to come in and pay a whole bunch of money, the city will get that money, we can turn around and invest that in affordable housing. So I think that kind of thing has stopped unless somebody knows of a recent case. But I want to ask a different question. Apparently there's like 2 sets of real estate lists. There's the like affordable home list, and then there's a whole bunch of other property. And sorry if you kind of alluded to this, but there's a whole bunch of other properties that the city owns that could potentially become affordable housing, like Rome Yard, for example. Now that one was actually occupied, but then the city moved the facilities. Are there other piece of property? Is there another list of properties that the city owns that aren't being used or being underutilized that could be shifted into the other column, or did you look at both?
Yeah, so I think we did not look at properties that currently have facilities on them. So when we vetted this list, our goal was to reduce the list and move some of those properties out. We're, from an operational standpoint, I understand what you're saying, that if it's underutilized, could it potentially have another use, but we're constantly looking for other properties to acquire as well for city operations. So carving off a piece of properties would have to go through some additional reviews. And so I think that, on that piece, if you all request an additional analysis, we would have to take some more time to go.
An example for everybody, maybe I mentioned this before, but when I was at Tampa Union Station with historians and the Friends of Tampa Union Station, and then later with its chief of staff, brought like 10 staff people, there's a lot of property there behind the station, not the baggage claim areas, but way behind the station. Part of it's a parking lot, but behind that's a brick building that's not a historic building. But, and I think there's a question whether maybe CSX or somebody owns part of it. But that property is an example that it could be turned into, you could rebuild something and make it part affordable housing or artist lofts or something. And there've got to be properties like that around the city, just like using Tampa Union Station to put an incubator space in there. It's being underutilized for passengers coming to and from Amtrak, so let's try to monetize it and support entrepreneurs. And I wonder what other properties there are out there. We want to make sure that we don't sell all of our properties so we don't have any room to expand in the future. But if there are properties that don't make sense for us to hold on to, or if we're reallocating, it would be good to know what properties we could potentially put into this. Thank you.
Anyone else? I agree. I think it would be really interesting to hear about those other 110 that didn't quite make it. But this is a really good start and a good way for folks to know what is available and how developers can help within the confines of our new community land trust. So thank you very much. This is strictly informational, correct?
This is informational as well.
Does anybody have a motion to do any more with it for right now?
Not at this time.
Okay, well, we look forward to more in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I really want to thank Mr. Drumgo and Michelle Van Loan. That was a very heavy lift. You said it wasn't 110. We started with 110 in the meeting that we did the review. So we removed about 50 or 60 properties. Some of them also include like the Gator building that has other development use on them. Okay. Some things that could be mixed use and not just affordable housing. So it's not like there's another list and we just pulled it, but some of them have been strategic acquisitions, like Mr. Drumgo mentioned, that could have other uses or other work to them.
And the only reason I ask is because that allows us to think when you're talking about multi-use, we're thinking about affordable housing in that vein as well. So sometimes it's nice to just get the whole picture.
Yep. It was a heavy lift, and so I want to commend them on the work to get this done. It was a lot of work. So thank you, Elise. Next on the agenda, we have item number 7. It's a resolution approving the grant not to exceed $50,000 and execution of a grant agreement, including a notice of grant agreement and owner's restrictive covenants between the CRA and the City of Tampa, and Serco Company to fund a facade improvement grant at 2701 North 16th Street.
So moved. Second.
Okay, I have a motion made by Board Member Maniscalco, seconded by Board Member Vieira. Roll call.
Maniscalco,
Yes.
Miranda, Citro,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Goods,
Yes.
Vieira,
Yes.
Herzog.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. Item number 8 is a resolution for a grant of not to exceed $44,886, and this is to fund a facade improvement grant located at 4319 North 40th Street.
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion made by Board Member Maniscalco, seconded by Board Member Miranda. Roll call.
Miranda, Citro,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Goods,
Yes.
Vieira,
Yes.
Maniscalco,
Yes.
Herzog.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
And then finally, item number 10 is a resolution. You heard a public speaker, I think it was your second public comments today that spoke on this item, asking for you to approve the amendment to the grant agreement with an existing grant of $45,011. And this is a pre-development cost project in the West Tampa CRA.
Board Member Maniscalco.
I just want to say, I think this is going to be a wonderful asset to the community. Community gardens, we've seen them in other parts of the city that exist or have existed in the past, and it's always a positive, and the community, I've always seen them embrace these. So move to approve the resolution.
Okay, motion made by Board Member Maniscalco, seconded by Board Member Miranda. Roll call.
Citro,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Goods,
Yes.
Vieira,
Yes.
Maniscalco,
Yes.
Miranda?
Yes.
Hurtak?
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Madam Chair, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Okay, do we have any information and reports? We'll start with Board Member Miranda.
No, ma'am, thank you.
Okay, Board Member Goods.
Mr. Drumgold, this is going to be probably down your alley here. We just had a pre-development for a facade here, and I know that some other East Tampa folks are talking about pre-development. And I did receive a call as it relates to pre-development, and what I'm concerned about and want some information back is a lot of times you have buildings, but you look at engineering versus facade versus if a building is structurally sound, and making sure that you have maybe a monies or in the policy set aside that people can have architect or engineers look at buildings up front, because they don't need to put in, have an idea, but the idea may not work because the building is not structurally sound, and I think when you talk about engineering, I think that could be a pre-development cost. So I want to make sure that we have all avenues, because I know a lot of folks are calling about a lot of properties in East Tampa that are old and structure and size. So I just want to, before I make the motion, have you heard about that? Have you been having conversations about that?
We have, Councilman. We have talked to people in the community about the grants, and I still don't think they understand how they're administered, being candid. We passed the pre-development grant with 2 levels. The first level is a $15,000 grant that is I'll say, there's no tether to it. It's a $15,000 grant just for what you're saying, for project evaluation and for support on the architectural side. So that's no cost to the applicant. We just have a system that we have for when they apply for that grant so that we can support them. The level 2 of the grant is actually the portion that we ended up adopting with the forgivable loan aspect that gets deeper into project, and that's up to, I want to say, $300,000. So, if folks come in and they want to evaluate a project, the initial $15,000, that upfront evaluation, that's something that it should be pretty straightforward depending on, its applicability to the criteria that we laid out in the grant.
I'll hold off on the motion. Let's me and you have a discussion.
Sure.
And look at what those costs could be, because I think 15,000 might be a little low for some of these projects in East Tampa. Throughout the city, and some of our CRAs, where some of these buildings are very, very old, and engineering may cost a little bit more as a preliminary workthrough. So let's have a conversation and see what you think, or a range of what engineering costs will cost in case we need to be incorporated as a Plan 1, but a Plan 1A in case that supersedes $15,000.
Sure, and I respect that. I think that the encouragement should be to get people to come in and apply for the grants. If there's a modification to a grant that's necessary, we can go before the CAC. We can come back to this body as well if we need grant modifications. But I would encourage people to come in and talk to staff about the needs before they attempt to interpret on their own, right? What they think they can do with the grants.
So since you said that,
Yes, sir.
that portion it would lead me into another question, reference to communication. I think that is a key component that a lot of people don't know or don't understand. So hopefully with this new structure, we'll have a true communication so people can know truly about the programs and how the programs really, really work. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't see a lot of communication about our programs. Some of the folks who are going through these seeds, they kind of know it, maybe by word of mouth, but I don't see anything on TV. I don't see any literature. I think for people to understand and know, they got to see it to believe it first, or we look at doing one major project so people can know, hey, the CAC did this, you need to be applying. So I think we got to get, again, implementation. We got to find one project in one of those areas, those CACs, and make it work so people can know. But I think we got to have a robust communication. People can know this is what we have.
Understood.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Board Member Citro.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Board members, we understand that the offer of transportation did not pass. We understand that that left Tampa, the city of Tampa, in a lurch as far as transportation goes within our city limits. We also understand that the city of Tampa cannot raise revenues for transportation. That is left solely up to the BOCC, Board of County Commissioners. Our hands are tied. Our citizens' hands are tied. But yet I'm sure we all receive calls and emails every day asking us what we're going to do about transportation. The Tampa streetcar in 2021 had over 800,000 riders on it. There is a plan in place, there was a plan in place to extend the streetcar to Palm Avenue. And knowing that, Karen Kress with the Downtown Partnerships convinced the city to lower the parking minimums within that area going up and down Florida and Tampa Street, which would convince those people living there to use public transportation. Alas, the offer of transportation did not pass. That extension will provide a seamless connectivity between Tampa Heights and downtown core, Channelside District, and Ybor City. The streetcar would help alleviate parking facilities in those 4 neighborhoods, providing a park once experience in the community to visitors. Given the current street ridership with over 800,000, which is second in the nation only to Kansas City, this extension will connect underserved communities separated by 275. The extension will be the first phase, hopefully, to extend further services to the airport, both regional with Sunrail and established by TPO. Board, I'm going to make a motion. I move to have the CRA board, CRA staff, explore the prior plans to extend the Tampa streetcar to Palm Avenue and return it back downtown using CRA funds from Channelside, downtown, Tampa Heights, CRA districts. Those funds will provide the matching funds needed to complete all funding for the state of Florida and from the state of Florida and federal government, and to contact FDOT to see if the extending plans can be modified and lower the cost of the matching funds. I have contacted members of FDOT. I have contacted state representatives, state senators, and they are all saying that there is funding from the state. And we all know that Secretary Buttigieg is giving money away for transportation throughout the country. I'm hopefully going to get a second on this motion.
Okay. I have a motion made by Board Member Citro, seconded by Board Member Carlson.
Can I ask a question?
Yes. Yeah.
Do you have any idea, and let's not hold anybody to these numbers, but do you have any idea how much they're asking the CRA to put in?
From the numbers that I was getting, and again, going back to modifying the plans are there. We don't have to go through planning. The plans are already there. And these plans have beautiful, wonderful new cars and lay down tracks, put down stations, use our existing streetcars and or buy a couple more streetcars that we have now. 16 to 20 million.
Wow, that's all. And then the other question is, and sorry if you said this, but what's the status on the FDOT funding of the operating costs? Is that been extended? Is it going to be extended in the future? Do you know?
Hopefully that's going to be extended, but we will cross. Hopefully that will be extended, but that bridge will be crossed when we get there. I'm just asking for the possibilities of using CRA funds so that we can get this streetcar extended up to Palm Avenue and back down.
And if I could, just, if you could modify your motion to have staff report back about, I mean, we have to look at the community development plans to see if they need to be modified. We also need to do some financial planning because you all have made some major commitments in these CRAs to see what kind of funds we have available.
To report back in our March CRA board meeting. Board, I thank you for your understanding, and I thank you for the second on the motion.
Board Member Maniscalco.
Thank you very much. Everybody knows that I love the streetcar. I've used it, I don't even know how many times. And it is a significant asset, especially in the areas that you've talked about, that they connect and how we can further connect and further expand that in the future. I'm going to support this today because we're asking for information and a study. However, housing is the #1 issue. I know we allocated or voted to allocate $20 million in unspent CRA dollars most recently for housing. But remember, you know, people are facing homelessness, the rising rents, the rising housing costs. Those should be first priority. However, I will support this because we're getting information. We'll see. I look forward to what Ms. Travis and others will say, and then we'll take it from there. So thank you very much.
Board Member Goods.
I mean, I'll support it today for information only, but I, right now, in theory, I'm not looking at spending that kind of money on a streetcar when we got a housing issue. People are hurting, they're getting evicted, and we need those dollars for housing. And furthermore, who all is going to be benefiting from the streetcar? Just saying Tampa Heights and, you know, downtown, other people are going to question that they don't have transportation either. So I'll wait to hear back and get information, but and I'll support it today for informational.
Board Member Miranda.
Thank you. Ms. Travis, just chronologically, what's the period of time that the CRAs are started? How many years are they into it?
You're asking how much life do they
Yeah,
have
life
left?
of a CRA.
Probably about 10, 11 years. Some of them, so once we do the restructuring and putting people in the right places and positions, I want to look at all of the CRA plans and the ones that should be, that we would recommend sunsetting or modifying the life of them, some of them that need to be extended. And I would contend that you probably can extend your CRA specifically to deal with transportation and not necessarily other development. But it's what I came to the podium to say to the board is when we come back in March, what I'll try to do is show you the budget with your different buckets. You have capital improvement projects, you have your housing initiatives that you, and some other major funding commitments, but also where we need to amend the community redevelopment plans and set a plan for that to be able to enact that and possibly contemplate extension. When you're extending the life of your CRA, you also have to do a blight study. These things takes a little bit of time, but we have some experts right here that can help us lead that charge and start that process.
And I do want, there's a state statute that, about the life of CRAs that we're subject to, that we'd have to look at. And also, all the CRAs and the life and the duration of the CRAs are subject to an interlocal agreement with the Board of County Commissioners. So we cannot unilaterally extend the life of CRAs, even if we can do so under the state statute. So.
And my question related to that was, the second part was, at what part are we getting, how many years from the end of the CRAs? Just, you don't have to be accurate, just
10 or 11 years.
A lot of the CRAs terminate, I believe, in 2034. I have to go back and look. Downtown last, I think, until the 2041 timeframe, but that's about the duration of the CRAs currently.
In fact, I was one of the council members who started the streetcar. I think the whole cost at that time, I'm going by memory again, so don't hold me to it, was $11 million.
I'll take that from us.
Yeah.
I think, I'm not sure.
Anyone else? Okay, we have a motion and a second. A motion made by Board Member Citro, seconded by Board Member Carlson. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, anything else?
Madam Chair, I'd like to thank the board members for consideration on this. I want to thank the CRA staff for looking into this, and I hope we can get this accomplished. Nothing further, Madam Chair.
Okay, Board Member Maniscalco.
I would like to wish my great aunt a happy 90th birthday.
Wow.
She is my oldest living relative, and she is my grandmother's sister. My grandmother lives in Sicily, has lived there her whole life, but my aunt lives here in Lutz. So I get to be able to enjoy that real Sicilian cooking without having to go all the way over there. And let me tell you, food like you've never tasted. And if you see how active and full of energy she is, you wouldn't believe she was 90. So a very happy birthday to her.
Excellent. Board Member Vieira.
Yes, ma'am, thank you very much. Just two really quick items. Number one, I mentioned this before, I'd like for the CRA staff to get with our friends at the Ybor City History Museum to inquire on ways in which, with existing programs or any other items that may be available, they can assist with the Ybor City Museum. They're going through some different challenges right now, and obviously we want to do everything we can to preserve that. And that can come back in April, but if you guys need more time, I'm glad to give you all more time. So, and again, more time, please let me know.
Okay, I have a motion by Board Member Vieira and a second by Board Member Maniscalco. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And then second, if I may, I was approached by a gentleman that lots of us know, Colonel DJ Reyes, who's doing a lot of stuff for veteran housing. And obviously here we're spending a lot of funds, rightfully so, on affordable housing. And I wanted to have CRA staff that's handling some of the housing investments meet with Colonel Reyes and some other veteran housing advocates to see what is being done with the funds that are being spent to assist, particularly with veterans and affordable housing, et cetera. And we can have that come back just for a report in May of 2023. And again, if you guys need more time, please let me know.
Okay, motion made by Board Member Vieira, seconded by Board Member Maniscalco. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
That's it, thank you.
Okay. Board Member Carlson.
Yeah, two real fast. We've worked on, or we're working on Union Station and Tampa Theater. There are a lot of other historic buildings, especially in Ybor. Some of them are privately owned and some of them are publicly owned. But I would just like to ask staff to talk to the Ybor CAC and the Cuban Club to see if there's any possibility of the CRA supporting or helping the Cuban Club to maintain its structure.
Second.
A motion made by Board Member Carlson, seconded by Board Member Maniscalco. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
And the other one is move to ask CRA staff to meet with the Ybor CAC and the Ybor Chamber to discuss what people in Ybor think is missing that the downtown partnership could provide, and if it is possible for the CRA or another Ybor organization to offer those services. Not asking one way or another, just asking the questions so we get information. And a report, sorry, both of these to report back on March 9th.
Second.
Okay. Motion made by Board Member Carlson, seconded by Board Member Maniscalco. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
That's it, thank you.
Okay. Board Member Citro.
And thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you very much, Board. Councilman Maniscalco mentioned a birthday, and happy birthday to your aunt. Our former city councilwoman, Miss Mary Alvarez, her birthday was 2 days ago. Happy birthday, Councilwoman.
Yes, happy birthday. Okay. Yes, I have a motion to write a letter in support of a grant for a TPO study to look at I-275 improvements from I-4 to Bears, which includes the idea of a boulevard that might replace 275. We've been asked to just write a letter in support of looking at what that area might look like. The grant would come from FDOT and could be used to look at all sorts of improvements, but the reason I brought it to the CRA is because those are in some of our blighted areas that we do cover, and I thought that support from the CRA might be a little bit different than from City Council. Okay.
Question, if I may, and I apologize, I'm getting over a cold, or past a cold, but I'm slower than usual. Is this in support of the project to tear down 275 in favor? Again, could you restate it?
It's a motion to write a letter in support for a grant of a TPO study, just a study that would look for multiple improvements to that I-275 corridor.
That's fine, yes.
That does include that as a study.
Okay.
Not any type of motion to actually do anything, but to simply study the different types of things we can do around that corridor.
Okay, good. I just didn't want to. I didn't want to marry that. I think many of us are dating it. We're not ready to marry it. But yeah, I'm vote yes. Thank you.
We have a motion from Chairwoman Hurtak, a second from Councilmember Goods. And before we vote, let me just say, there was life before the interstates. The interstates are still a new concept, and I would certainly support a study, and we'll go into further details. All in favor of the motion? Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. Motion to receive and file?
So moved.
Yep. And, yeah,
Aye.
okay.
Aye.
Do we have, no second here?
Second.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Motion made by Board Member Miranda, seconded by Board Member Goods. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned.